wasn't going to say anything today because I just wanted to come and sort of see who was going to show up for this. But I first came to read Castaneda in the, I guess, the early 70s, actually may have been late 69. I had a school teacher, and I had a paper to write on religion. And being the son of a devout atheist and a seriously well-informed agnostic, my father was a PhD English professor who taught the Bible as literature, and it was always fun to get into an argument with a seriously religious person because he knew the Bible better than any priest I've ever seen. But I didn't know what to do because I really, being a young teenager, having been raised by these two people, I didn't have a clue what to write. So I went to my professor and I said, I don't know what to do here. I've never been to church. What do I do? Can you give me something that I can read? And he gave me two books, or suggested two books. The one was The Way of the White Clouds by Lama Govinda, which is an excellent book. And the other was The Teachings of Don Juan Ayaki Way of Life. I read them both cover to cover and managed to write a paper and get a good grade on it. But it started me on a journey that led me to a lot of different places. And the things that I really wanted to discuss, if I can get my gizmo to work, is that what Castaneda brought to me was a way to think about spirituality, and it gave me a bit of a roadmap. Anybody who was brought up as a Catholic or a Buddhist or whatever, they sort of have a roadmap. They have a spiritual leader that teaches them things, all the readings and everything. So I got seriously involved in Buddhism particularly, and Castaneda also. And what I came to realize as I read all these different things was that basically when you listen to Don Juan or Jesus Christ or Buddha, they're all pretty much saying exactly the same thing, that it really is the one higher entity that is speaking through these different people, and or at least that's what I gained from it. And the different dream states that Castaneda talks about greatly are also, if you read Buddhist texts, they have what they call Lingompo, which is or night walking, which is one of the tests of becoming a tulku, which is there's 5 tulkus and the Dalai Lama. But one of the tests to become a tulku is that you have to visit all the temples in Tibet in one night, in one day, which back in the day was physically impossible. And so if they could make appearances at all these places, then they knew they had something, because the person was able to basically, Lingompa meant that you could become unattached from your physical being and sort of appear somewhere else, hundreds of miles away. And there's been a lot of criticism about Castaneda because, the dates don't match and this, that, and the other. But what you have to understand is that he was studying a shamanistic way of life, and that most of these people in these groups that become holy men, the world never knows. I mean, when Castaneda met Don Juan, he met him because he was a very polite man who sold herbal medicines in a market. And it took him a long time to open up to Castaneda and tell him who he really was. And I think most of these people are like that. The world doesn't know who they are or where they are. And you spoke a lot about the various women in his life and how they disappeared or ended up dead. I really wasn't, I'm not familiar with his life. I read his books, but I kind of let it go after a while, because I got to a certain point with his teachings where you have to make a commitment, and it has to be total and complete. He talks about jumping off the cliff or the leap. And, you know, some people say, oh, that's a leap of faith, or that's an actual physical leap. But basically what it means is that you're leaving your entire life behind to enter into this new state of being. And if they, you know, it may very well be that these women that were so close to him were very high in that rank of, particularly if you read the Second Ring of Power, Don Juan always considered the women the most powerful. And it may just be that they sort of shed their physical being at that point. So, you know, I'm not going to guess one way or another what that was, but that could be it. And as far as people criticizing the dates and all that, yeah, they don't match up, but the body of what's being said there is very important. And this is a man who went into this situation, was brought in by these shamans, and taught some very serious stuff. And he managed to bring it back and display it for the world to see, which is a very, very rare thing. And I think that the dates probably don't match up a lot, because he honestly had no concept of what the dates were. He was involved so heavily in this that he just didn't know.
Part of the teaching was to...
It's forever.
To dissolve all that.
There is no temporal line if you're good at it, you know.
And family as well, you know, you are on your own. I have no future, I have no past.
Right, yeah, I mean, and living in Boulder, Colorado in the mid-'70s, it was a very serious power spot. And before that, I lived out on Guam, which was also a very interesting power spot. And in fact, Gulfport in its own right is a very important power spot. If you research the history of this town, you realize that back in the 20s, they had a shop up in what's now the Peninsula Inn that dealt with, you know, herbal remedies and talismans and crystals and things like this. And so this town has a long history of having this stuff. And the reason for that is that it's a power spot. And that's probably why Gulfport draws the people it does draw here. Each area has its own sort of little energy, and Boulder is a huge one. But, you know, that's about all I have to say, is that, you know, I gave it up a long time ago because I read it and buried myself in it for a while. And then I got to that point where I had to make the leap, where I had to literally cross over. And I knew that I wasn't pure enough to do it. I still like to have sex. I still like to drink alcohol. And there were a lot of things. And it's all about power. And if you don't have absolute purity, it can devour you. So I put it aside and left it at that. And I came down here today not figuring I was going to talk about this, but, you know.
Well, Dan, you put
so
it so succinctly, so
yeah,
clearly.
so that's, whether it's fiction or not, you know, in terms of temporal logic, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And I would just warn anybody who is reading these books that I've had friends that have taken Datura, or there's different names for it, Jimson weed. I would warn you against it. You know, it's a very dangerous substance. I've had friends who've taken it. I have not myself, but I have seen people, and if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have a guide, it can devastate you. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to call up Peter.